I show us up in the feed, just so you know. And now you should be able to see us because the feed will take like 30 seconds till you see that the feed is live. Ready to go? Good morning, Quasar Market Live. This is Howard Greenberg here with you this morning, and I've got the man, the CEO and founder of Quasar Markets himself, Big Beat, Steve Orr. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Hondo. How are you this morning, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. We got a lot of tech earnings today. I'm a big shopper. Yesterday was retail earnings, a lot of talk about there. Looks like a lot of people were doing some shopping besides me, so I guess that's good for the economy. And I know you wanted to get right into the SPY in a minute, but let's talk about it. Nvidia. I think everyone's waiting on it. You've been talking the last couple of days. I have seen some people sort of sitting on their hands, money on the sidelines.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're as old as we are, remember when Apple actually ran the markets, right? That was back in the day.
Yeah.
When we all waited for Apple earnings every single time and to see whether or not that Apple would beat. And it did until it didn't. Those surprises on Apple really caused a lot of messes into the markets. And because of that, um, that was the whole market, right?
Right.
We also saw that back in the day with Walmart. And if we go back in time before even our time, Bethlehem Steel, you could go back and you could talk about Montgomery Wards and Sears. Remember, Sears was a big deal
I was a
when it
big
came to.
Montgomery Ward guy in Chicago.
Yeah, no, we're really dating ourselves, right? We're talking about this thing. But when you look at Apple back in the day, we looked for a few things, right? We looked for how many computers were sold, Macs were sold, how many, and eventually iPads were sold. And as they grew the company and how many AirPods were sold, became the key tickers for them, right? And so let's talk about that for the Nvidia side. So if I've been talking about Blackwell chipset for a long time now, saying, hey, this is serious here. AI is becoming quite integrated into our lives now, which I've said that would happen eventually. So we not only do we want to see how many NVIDIA cards are slapped into laptops and put into computers, but we also want to see how they're doing on the server side, the AI side, quantum computing side, all of those things. And if we start to see really good numbers out of that, that's key. In the past, when we looked at those numbers, it was how many units were sold and how many units they're talking about in the future selling and where are they selling them and what were the margins on those chips. We're not talking about that right now. Now we're talking about just fully blown AI. But if that's the case, I think two things you see in the NVIDIA. They may have blowout earnings and the stock falls. Why? Because maybe the guidance is bad. Maybe they're saying, you know what, we're seeing cracks in the ceiling up here. Maybe we're seeing things that just aren't there. Or we're going to see, man, the future is bright. Let's go. I got to wear shades kind of feeling. And it just takes off. If that's the case, chipsets everywhere, TMC, SSDI, they're all going to go crazy, go straight back up and run. And I think you'll also see the same thing probably in crypto as well.
I couldn't agree more. A couple of things you said there that I want to touch on, quite frankly. So with NVIDIA, you're saying it's time to put up. We've sort of, the time to talk about AI and the need for chips and what everybody was going to buy was sort of in the past. And now we want to see people buying these chips. Are they paying the big bucks? Are they upgrading? What does that look like? What do orders look like? So I do think that's a big one. As you said, another one that I know I didn't understand for years is the weighting of like an S&P and
Mm.
how that does matter that much, because I never understood why Apple moving a tenth of a point would move that a tenth of a point. So could you maybe talk to our viewers a little bit about the S&P and the ETF and what it tracks and how it's weighted and a little bit about that?
Yeah, that I think it's a misnomer to a lot of people in the markets that the QQQs, the SPYs, all of those weighted ETFs aren't equal, right? Just because your name is in those exchanges or indices in some ways, just doesn't mean that the whole market is based around that. It's also based on weighting. So those indexes buy up to a certain amount of the stock, in order to be able to weight that stock out. So in other words, if it's a company like Apple, it's going to have a heavy weighting on the QQQs because it's quite frankly, it's a big company. So it has to overweight the other companies based on size. And so they do that. And when you see those kind of stocks go through, you also have to make sure that when you're trading the Qs or trading the SPY, that you bring those kind of thoughts into the process of actually buying and selling those stocks, because it could have a real effect on that economy. So right now, I think that Nvidia has a huge, large presence on the Qs, and so I think we want to show that chart here in the daily chart.
Give me 1 second to switch it over to you here. There you go, Steve. Go ahead and share your screen.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. And you probably see this is a daily chart on the QQQs. I'm going to lay some lines out so people can see it. I'm also going to make it way bigger so people can understand what we're doing here. So this is the QQQ. I'm going to lay the line from the recent highs to the latest high, the recent low to now. And you'll see that we're starting to see a flag, right? Now, at this point, this is a bear flag. And then I'm going to lay down some lines around it.
Okay.
And then the tops here, which have expanded, and you'll already see the lows that have already pushed through. So I'm going to do that from here, there. And what does that look like? Parallelogram. Interestingly enough, that it's well, I call it dead man, unfortunately. That's usually is yep. It's you see the guy's laying down. He's got his arms and his legs. You can see that he's starting to lay down a little bit. Normally, a guy's falling, so you'll see here that this is the latest daily, right? That right. So if you look at it from a perspective of Japanese candlesticks, pull it down here. This right here said, okay, nothing has happened. Today's 28th. That's us today. If you look at this one and this one, this is a spinning top. Usually a bad sign. Spinning top there. Spinning top there. Look at this. Look at that. Okay.
Steve, would a spinning top be described as a long wick surrounded by two short wicks?
So what it means is that because this one here, you can see this one here, that means that's the high of the day was there, the low of the day was there, and it actually closed and opened near the actual opening and closing. So it stayed the same.
So no gaps.
Correct.
Okay.
You'll see that there's a large gap right here. See that gap right there? Boom. And there was a gap here. When the gap here, we filled that not too long. Maybe like 6 days later, boom, that gap got filled. There was a gap here. Guess what? That gap got filled. There was a gap up here that did not get filled. Now, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay something on this chart that I use a lot.
And folks, I want to let you know Steve is using TradingView here, one of the charts functions that you find that functionality within Quasar Markets, one of our good partners. I also am a big fan and use TradingView, as you'll see as we go through charts.
All right, I'm going to show you. Now it says Pitchfork here. It's better known as Andrew's Pitchfork because the guy named Andrew puts it. And I'm going to pull it right on the system, the bottom there, and I'm going to lay the pitchfork out just on the line. All right, see that? This is what I see in the QQQs if NVIDIA actually continues to push higher here, that we will push the Qs up. And I think you'll see already the number's already pushing up to 501.38.
Wow, okay. You heard that.
Now, if we don't see good numbers and the Qs do pull back and NVIDIA gets smacked a bit, you should see a pullback somewhere into here around 462.25. And people will ask me, well, in what time frame? So I always say the same thing. look at your lines, and they'll tell you.
Right.
So in this case, probably right around September the 9th.
Okay, you've got it here from Big Beat himself, breaking down the charts on TradingView. I love that. Thank you so much for doing that for us, Steve. Getting ready here. We're about 20 minutes away from the open. Still looking fairly flat this morning. And again, I think people are waiting for some earnings reports today. In general, anything else you're sort of looking at this morning, Steve, that's, catching your eye so far?
I have been keeping my eye on one stock that I think is very important when it comes to AI, and that's CRM. I have been keeping my eye on CRM quite heavily here the last few days. I don't really know what to think right now because the stock has been falling and then bouncing back up. If you look at an hourly chart on that, I won't pull a chart up, but if you look at an hourly
Let
chart,
me just get that ready for you. And for those that don't know, CRM is Salesforce. There you go, Steve. You're back up.
okay, yep, sorry, and just pull up the chart myself, I guess. We'll do that.
There it is.
And then I can do CRM here. All right, I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to really pull up an interesting chart here for you. So I'm going to pull up a 10-minute chart over the last bit, and there we go. Here is what I'm concerned about. In the past, we've seen a couple of dips right there in the middle of the afternoon on CRM, and we started to see a little bit of it the last few days. Why is CRM to me so important? Well, because quite frankly, they are looking at sales in businesses, right? And so for me, I'm going to turn my chart off here.
Okay.
And when you look at sales, and I think we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, of say like Walmart or Costco or Box, big box stores, right? And Dropbox. So when you look at those kind of companies, you have to say, okay, are people still buying? Are they still helping out the economy in that aspect? And to me, that's part of the inflation issue, right? That's where the Fed's fighting, is because people are still buying things that they really probably don't even need. Look, my house is no different. Stuff I probably don't even need, right? It's the same situation, right? So people are still buying, it's causing problems, and you're seeing it, but now you're starting to see people slow down their buying. Inflation is coming down. The Fed is starting to feel better about inflation, and they're going to start lowering rates. So that effect is going to have on a lot of things. And when people say, "Well, I didn't know about the markets," the other stocks are telling you, right?
Right.
We can also have Dow theory. Dow theory will tell you that if transportation is falling as well, then you'll also see it as a situation where, okay, that means less packages are being delivered. That means they're buying less things. So inflation's also coming down. So if you're looking at those, looking at FedEx, looking at UPS, and all of a sudden you're getting a much better picture of the overall economy.
I will say another thing that as I was examining a lot of the earnings reports over the last 24 hours from those retailers, a lot of worry about China, Asia in general, Australia. You saw guidance, even though there were some beats. Nordstrom's had a nice little beat. They're not giving any more guidance down the road. They're not changing any estimates a lot of times. I saw Foot Locker got killed overnight. They're down about 8.6% last time I looked in pre-market this morning. And they're closing stores in Asia and Europe because of lack of demand. So I do think that sometimes we have such a U.S.-centric view as investors that you got to open your eyes a little bit. Make sure you're listening to these earning reports. They're really important. You can find most of them available right on Quasar Markets, right on the platform itself. You're able to, with IRA, go right through and see those. So make sure you take advantage of it. I know I was listening to them. Saw that with Smucker's, also another one. America sort of carrying the books when it comes to the jelly markets. I'm a big jelly man myself. Had it on some toast this morning. And so they actually reduced their full year profit look. So like I said, so while we are seeing sales were okay leading up until this second quarter, it does seem that a lot of retailers are looking for a little bit of a softening there as we move ahead. We are
I'll
about
mention one
15
here
minutes to
as
the open here.
I'll mention one stock here, Super Microcomputer, SMCI, down
Oh
another
yeah.
10%. They are delaying their annual filing. They got hit yesterday by a short report. And look at this, down another 9,
Let me
10% this
switch
morning.
over to you here.
It really, really pushed yesterday to the downside on that short report. And then they bought, right? They bought on that. And but now we're coming out and saying, hey, we are going to delay our annual filing. Where there's smoke, there's fire. That's not good. I was hoping that was, and I don't, as you all know, it's a rule of mine. There's no such thing as hope and luck in the markets. But in this situation, it looks pretty bad here. So SMCI could be another one here that if at all
It has been where there's smoke, there's fire with them. Speaking of Hindenburg and the short sellers, I did see that Ambarella is has their annual reports today in India. One of the richest men in the world who was hit by Hindenburg last year. That was able to fight through it. But they definitely have an influence. Those short sellers, and have definitely moved it. Recently we've seen that also with some of the the what used to be called the corporate raiders. Now they're called now they make much nicer names for them, but some of these activists that have been getting on the boards of different ones, we saw it with a few others. Do you think there's going to be any other blowouts? And speaking of that sort of thing, with Disney and Paramount, now that Brofman has stepped away, and it looks like Skydance is going to be able to move through with that acquisition.
Yep. And that's good, right? I mean, I think the consolidation within the streaming sphere is a good thing. I'm tired of paying 25 different streaming fees every month. I liked it when Disney and Hulu got together. That was a good thing. Talking about the chipset too as well. There's one stock that I want to look at too is Ambarella. It's
Yeah,
AMBA.
AMBA up nicely this morning. You gonna pull that up for us, Steve?
Yeah, I won't pull it up. I'll just talk about it real
Okay.
quickly. They had a good earnings, but key there was a good guidance, and the stock's now up 20%. I've been trading Ambarella for a long time. I can tell you right now that those earnings numbers were really good. We're already seeing volume at 2.2 million, and normal volume there is 600,000. So that should help some of the other chipsets. So yeah.
I think that will have some folks making some YOLO bets on Nvidia's earnings today, since that will be one of the first in the chip markets. Again, cloud computing box had good reports yesterday. So tech still seems to be driving the bus here when it comes to the markets in general. That doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. As I was mentioning with the Chinese economy, another one that I saw that's been taking a little bit of a beat down over the last few days has been PDD, which is Timu's parent company. Again, on weakening expectations and in the Chinese economy, and they're also actually complaining that they're seeing some more competition by the bigger boys in that game, the Walmarts, the Alibabas, and likes, that are actually bringing down some prices. Are you seeing that when you're out, Steve? People that are trading down. I've noticed it in the restaurant side, where I'm seeing busier. Those what I would call value rated restaurants are a little busier than what would be the luxury tier. We're seeing more wait times there. Seeing earnings do a little better there. Your Chipotle's, quick service restaurants outperforming your cheesecakes and some of those others.
Yes, I will. I will say that. I'm a fan of cheesecake myself. CAKE, the stock thing. I was just there not too long ago. I will tell you what's going to affect the restaurants here in the next few months, and that's Eli Lilly, LLY, because of their weight loss stocks or their drugs there, Zepbound and Mounjaro. The people are eating out less, and grocery stores are being hit also by politics, saying that there's some price gouging within Kroger and things of that nature. So no, I don't. I think in the next few months, I think you're going to see less people actually at the restaurants. I think you're going to have a pretty good time there. One thing that I always look at when I look at how exciting is the world of restaurants and going out and vacationing is looking at Disney and looking at sales at Disney. And two of the biggest times at Disney is their Halloween time. They have a Halloween party and they have one at Christmas, right?
Yep.
And how sold out are they? While the Christmas one is completely sold out, you can't even get tickets to it. The Halloween was sold out 2 months ago. So people are still spending money, but they're being a little bit more wiser about it, and they're picking out places to spend their money that they feel like they get a better value for it. And so that's what I think the difference is. And then maybe looking at higher quality restaurants. So I think you're going to see places like McDonald's and Wendy's and those places actually come back down. I think people are going to be being more wiser about spending their money and eating. Actually, I think they'll be eating healthier, and I think they're going to be eating in fancier restaurants better than they are with lesser fast food restaurants.
I can't argue with that. A second part of that is that those fast food restaurants have really, seen their sales plummet as they've taken away their value meals. They sort of took that value proposition off the table. As a guy that eats, unfortunately, I have well, not unfortunately, fortunately, I have a 3-year-old. We do eat at a McDonald's, and some of those
Sure.
$5 meals all had gone away, and now they're all bringing them back. In fact, I know Subway has had some huge pushback by their franchisees because they brought back the 6.99 foot long subs. So I do think that was part of it, that you started to see, those value brands weren't providing value anymore.
Right.
They were, almost as expensive as going to Cheesecake Factory.
Hey, and I'll tell you that when you're looking at what Warren Buffett's doing, you're in good hands, right? Because Warren Buffett likes Diet Coke and Dairy Queen.
So
He
don't
liked
I.
he liked Dairy Queen so much he bought it, right? I think the same thing is going to happen here. He's going to go whale hunting. He's probably already doing that now, looking for companies that and I could see him buying a Wendy's or a McDonald's very easily. He's got the cash right now. And so, yeah, I'm telling you, the fast food industry may change a little bit here in the next 6 to 8 months to a year.
That's interesting to hear. Yeah, he definitely has a lot of money. I did think I saw last night again. He sold some more Bank of America stock off, so he doesn't seem to be so big on the banks right now.
Nobody
Um,
knows. I mean, the
yeah,
banks are hurting right now, especially with rates coming down. People don't want to stick their money in banks. So what are they doing with it? They're buying crypto. What are they doing with it? They're betting with the DraftKings. What are they doing with that money? They're still going on trips, on high quality trips we talked about. What are they doing with that? They're upgrading their homes. Some people are holding back to have money so that they'll be able to buy a home. So yeah, I don't think cash is king right now, and the banks are where the cash goes. So no, I don't think banks are going to do very well.
yeah. I mean, that's definitely been his, last few months has been getting out of those. About the only thing out of his, sort of stalwarts that he hasn't really touched is he's added to his Oxy position. I know you've been a fan of Oxy Petroleum for a while too. Uh, but
Yeah, I mean
yeah, who knows
the
what he's gonna
Ham
buy?
family. Yeah, the Ham family obviously knows Occidental Petroleum very well. Obviously, Nebraska's got it all going on up there when it comes to oil. The fracking side of things have been really strong, and the political scene for them in Oxy is really strong for them too. They protect the fracking, so they'll have oil for generations up there if we need it. So I think we're okay there. Howard, we are about 6 minutes here now going into the open. What are you thinking about this open? Do you think it's clean, or you think it's going to be jerky again today?
I think we're going to continue to be jerky. I think that we're just not picking direction. The market wants to go up. People want it. Seems the perma bulls and pushing the market up little by little, but they're not able to maintain. We've seen those afternoon sort of sell-offs. But with that being said, as you showed with Salesforce, any type of dip is sort of aggressively being bought up. You're seeing some pretty big wicks there. So that part of it is still there. I did see oil starting to pull back a little bit today, as you were just talking about oil, and a little bit of concern in Libya um, with the oil.
Yeah, I mean, oil is a different situation right now. I mean, you're seeing oil now in these bottoms here, 74.60, something like that, 74.56 right now, a barrel. Look, most oil companies need over $60 a barrel, the majority of them, in order to be profitable. And we still haven't filled up the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So there is a bottom holding the oil market up. We'll not see that for a little while. So I think we're okay there. But if you were to talk to me and say, hey, Steve, what's the biggest question mark around oil? And I think that's the Dixie, the dollar. Right now, 101.12. It was right around 100.5, but just yesterday.
Yeah.
So people were about the Dixie up yesterday. I think you're going to see a dump of the yen into the market, which is going to push up China yuan. And look, this is not a good position to be in a lot of places because, quite frankly, the yen is going to be strong. And I know for a fact I got to go in Japan in January, and so I'm holding out for a dip in the yen a little bit. But the dollar down means our products here are a lot cheaper for foreign entities buying us. So I like that, right? I like our dollar being cheap so that other people can buy it. It's not good for vacationing over in Europe. If you wanted to go there, the last 3 years have been a great time to go. I know I did, but right now I'm not a big fan of this. I'll tell you, it's also affecting, I think, the crypto market with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's having a struggle here, Hondo, at 60,000.
Yeah, when you were going to mention the DXY, I watch that a lot for crypto, quite honestly, as it's been a pretty good indicator. One of the things that, people trying to just, get better earn than what they're getting on a US dollar or trying to beat the yen carry trade. Bitcoin was a big part of that. And anytime we sort of approached above that 105 to 110 mark, we tended to see a sell off. And, but the Dixie in general has been coming down. Steve, could you explain the Dixie a little bit, the DXY, which is a good way to track the strength of the US dollar? Because again, I don't know, I know for a while I would use that word and I would look at a chart, but I didn't quite understand what actually made up that, symbol, the DXY.
Yes, so the Dixie is better than those are traders, I guess. The DXY, if you see it on charts and things, it's called the US dollar index or indice there, and it's actually got six different currencies in it that are weighted into it, and that's the Japanese yen, the euro, the Canadian dollar, the British pound, the Swedish krona, and the Swiss franc. I'm going to go back through that for um, and we'll go through it sometime. We'll talk about the different, like the cable is the
Right.
British pound, right? So we can talk about and over time as Quasar Markets Live, I'll be able to explain all the different animals that are in the stocks and all of the different acronyms that we use here, so that people get more acclimated to the trading world and trading speak, shall we say. So when I say the cable, I mean the pound, right? If I say the CAD or the Canadian dollar, the loonie, you'll understand what I'm saying about that. So, yes, the index started in 1973 with about a base of 100. So think of it right now. We started back in 1973 with a base of 100, and today it's at 101.10. So we're right back to where we were.
So we get some stability there, I guess you could say.
50 years, right? And when you see the dollar going higher, that's when you know, okay, we're basing it against the other currencies. And so when we see it below 100, that's usually a good sign that we'll see a lot of countries buying our products. And we see it over 101. That's when you see a strong dollar. So people say strong dollar, roughly 105, right? That's 5% above most of the currencies. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for explaining that to us again. I do know that there are some things that people take for granted as being, pretty simple, but they're not necessarily simple or as straightforward without getting a little bit of an insight there. We're about 1 minute away here. SPY still down a little less than a tenth of a point. QQQ, the NASDAQ ETF, about 0.12 down. So we'll see what we get here over the next few minutes. Another one that's been definitely hitting some struggles lately has been one of our, our boy Elon's Tesla. It definitely down right now
Mhm.
about 209.21. Um, it closed yesterday up a little bit, about a quarter of a point today. See if that can start to get a bid. I noticed it was down towards the bottom of some support levels. What else
You
do we
know,
have?
it's interesting when I talk about the Dixie, Howard, not change the subject there, but at that time in 1973, the gold ounce was right around 35 to 40 bucks an ounce. Today it's at $2,509 an ounce. So when people say that our dollar is weakened, there you go.
That's a great example. And it really is that is where you see it, because some people might have got a misnomer, like I was saying, and say, well, wait a second, if the DXY hasn't really moved from that 100, it means that inflation hasn't hurt my dollar. No,
That's
your
right.
buying power would be exactly the opposite, because the gold, when it was at 100 and you could buy 3 ounces of gold, and now you can buy a third of an or a tenth of an ounce of gold.
We are
So
open here. A little bit of a green here, not much, but with the Nasdaq up about 14 points, Dow up about 4 points. Flipping back and forth here. I think it's going to be a quiet, what we call choppy day in the markets. So I think they're just waiting for earnings from Nvidia.
And I will say, I was looking at a lot of the tech stocks on some of the charts, and you're sort of trade range bound right now on a bunch of them, in between some support and some pretty strong support and resistance zones. That will lend to that too. That's what we've seen with Bitcoin. It sort of runs down to that 59 level, even a little bit lower sometimes, and then has moved back up to 64. But it's been stuck in that range here for a decent amount of time. Not gonna lie, I think it's got a little bit of a bear
S-
flag coming.
SMCI here down 13% here now, 476. We haven't seen that since looks like the 8th of the month. So yeah, we might be testing that low down there. And I think we just blew through that low. We did. We blew through the low of back in the 8th. And if I pull up a daily chart on SMCI, gosh, you'd have to go all the way back now to January. And if we blow through that, wow, you could go back to 300 bucks a share. But man, that's an erosion
Yeah,
of
there is not a ton of spots like you're saying
down
below. Down
14% now on SMCI.
426. You could
Yeah.
easily drop to 425 here. Does have one of our favorites at the bottom, the daily linear regression. Did help it back on the 8th, 7th, and 8th of August. Sort of found some support there and bounced up, but couldn't break through the halfway point on that linear regression, as I'm showing you right now. I have my screen up just so you know. Looking at SMCI on a daily chart, those downward facing sort of lines, the 3 lines there, the 2 zones, the red zone and the blue zone, that's part of linear regression, and it looks back 100 ticks on the chart and sort of shows you what has been similar to Bollinger Bands, gives you a good trading ranges. So I like that a lot. You can still see again that RSI had strung even lower again back on the 7th and 8th of August. If we head down to those RSI levels, as Steve mentioned, you've got some serious downside there availability.
We talked about oil a little bit earlier today. I just want to remind everybody the EIA oil numbers come out at 10:30 this morning, so that could be a struggle bus there for them.
I have noticed gas has dropped back down in my area again, so always like when that happens. VIX has moved back up to the mid-teens here at 1563. So we're seeing a little bit of volatility like we talked about. I think that's sort of expected going into these earnings today, with Nvidia being so heavy of a weight on the actual S&P and Nasdaq.
So I bought the dip yesterday, Hondo, on the Bitcoin.
I
I
grabbed
like that.
some last night. I grabbed some last night a little bit more. As you know, I've been sort of playing that range there. It's been moving, like I said, about 10% up and down over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, just seems to be range bound right now. The other thing that we'll look at when we start to talk a little bit more about Bitcoin is what's going on with wallets. We've been seeing the sell off by the U.S. We've been seeing the sell off by Germany. What we've seen though also is a lot of smaller retail selling off, and the whales have been repurchasing again. So the guys that sold off last time when it hit 65 as it's approached 59 seem to be buying back in at a pretty healthy clip there. So we've definitely seen that.
Yeah, as I always say, I don't care about Bitcoin. I'm not getting liquidated because I own it, right?
Absolutely.
Why are why are people? And you're in this space. This is your space. Why are people YOLOing into the crypto space so hard? 100x's and 200x's.
Well, it's the same. I would turn that question around a little bit and say, why are they betting on DraftKings? It's the same person, quite frankly, is that's what we've seen. It's, an aggressive trader who feels, they win once, they get that euphoria of turning, $1,000 into 50,000. And then they get, unfortunately, what tends to happen with those traders, though, is over time you lose because what worked once, what worked twice. It's the guys, same way, traders that we know that have doubled down, then they double down again, and then when they run out of money to double down, they're really in trouble. It's
Yeah,
that mentality of I just want, I refuse to lose, and it goes it goes to that gambling atmosphere. It's one thing that I have been happy to see is that a lot of that's getting cleaned up here in the U.S. While I'm not a big fan of overregulation of the market, I am a fan of pulling out stupidity out of the market, and 100x leverage is stupid in any trading situation.
right. I
Um,
agree.
so that's
You saw someone getting liquidated yesterday in the Bitcoin market for almost $13 million.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yesterday wasn't necessarily a dumping scenario. That was a people saw opportunity because over leverage was being used. That's one thing that you have to also keep in mind is that sophisticated traders are able to really look at this stuff on the blockchain and see where things are. So
Yep.
you can see through this transparency where the spread is, where is the liquidation point for a large position, and they will actively work to liquidate those. So that will be a good training situation we'll do at some point here on Quasar Markets Live. Walk you through what does that mean, how does that work, what are they looking for, how are they causing it. I mean, that's what happened, quite frankly, with Jump Capital and some of these other guys that did it to positions from FTX and Alameda and from Terra Luna and Do Kwon and those guys that caused the huge turbulence and drop in the markets year and a half, 2 years ago.
Right. I mean, when you trade without stops and you trade without protections that are in place for you, and then down the road admit that you didn't know how to trade, um, you should be liquidated. As stupid as that is, right?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I would ask people who would be bragging on Twitter about these leverage trades, at what price will you be liquidated? And they can't tell you. They don't
Right.
know. They don't know
That's
what
terrible.
that will happen. Interesting little downturn here. Tesla again getting hit a little bit this morning. Seeing some news that XPeng, again, Chinese company that's more priced on the low end of the EVs, just showed some positive guidance, and they have gained almost 15% this week now. So
Yeah, I
again,
mean, I think there's a good number of people in the United States that are nervous about, and that would be me included, about electric vehicles. But I went the hybrid way, right? I think that's the key, where Tesla is completely electric. But Xpeng coming out from China, that's going to be a big play because look, the U.S. dollar is cheap, the yuan is going up. They're making a big play for that, and they could be like they did in the 80s and 90s for Japan, dump a bunch of those cars into our market. And you'll start to see tariffs, yes, of course. But you saw our trade reps going into China today. So eventually you're going to have these kind of cars coming into our markets.
I do think you're going to see that. And like you said, these hybrids, it does provide a little bit of that comfort level for those of us that, are a little nervous of going full EV. And is there going to be enough charging stations? Will it get me where I need to go? Um, and that, so that in between thing is really, really a nice option to have there.
We're seeing SMCI now, super microcomputer, down 19% today. Wow.
Wow.
Let me put this in perspective, Howard. The 52-week range here is between 1229 and 226. So this stock has really been beaten up.
Yeah, I mean, there was some big accusations, excuse me, in the report yesterday, but that's
And you can't refute it if you're gonna change out your date that you're gonna
right.
release
If you're not
your
even going to report saying I have to hold off, yeah, I think that's what set people, even more in scared there.
seeing Anthony Costa on GNS. That's Genius Group. Genius Group now down 6% here at $1. Not sure what we're seeing there just yet. You just mentioned it. I think a lot of people need to know that I have a Twitter feeds over 6,000 coming into me, so I kind of know what's going on, and so I curated those and put it into Quasar Markets, some of the top ones, and you can get that in the Twitter news right on your module, right in your system.
I thought I had to look at the screen there for a second because I didn't think I was sharing my screen, and I was literally looking through our Twitter feed that you put together there. As we spoke, I got a little nervous, but yeah, Twitter feed is a great one. You don't have to use your TweetDeck, don't have to pay for a premium service. It's part of our service, and you have curated a great list that gives you a lot of information.
And one of the things that I wanted to do, make sure, was that the users had institutional news too. So we put together Quinn and QPN so that if the user wanted institutional level news, it's right in there in real time in the system. And we tried to do as cheap as possible, $59 a month for institutional news. You don't get that anywhere else. Just ask Bloomberg. And QPN, you can get it for a whole year for $99, including Squawk.
Yeah, it's such a good deal. Like you said, the premium services that you add into this more than pay for that subscription rate right there.
Berkshire Hathaway just topped $1 trillion.
Wow.
We're seeing a pop here in Bitcoin here a little bit. Back to the 60,000 hand, looks like, almost.
It's trying to make a move to it.
There she goes. There you go, baby. I wasn't scared yesterday. I think that a lot of traders get nervous as these liquidations happen and falls. I like to buy the dip mentality right now. It's still working out there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of when Bitcoin plays in a nice tight range, not tight range, but 10% range like it is right now. These are the times that you can do a little bit of day trading. You can pick it up at the 59s and look to sell it at the 65s and keep playing that. If you look at the daily chart, it's made that run now starting back in February, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different times. You could have made that trade pretty much and had it work out for you. So, that's part of technical analysis is looking for trends, right? Our friend Charlie Moon, the disciple of trend. Looking at the SPY here right now, 561.15.
People need to listen to Charlie Moon. He knows his stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely does. We think the Dow will hit a new high today?
I do, yes. It may be in the aftermarket, but I do think it'll hit a new high. And yesterday it happened in the afternoon, right? So that's usually about when it happens, when the nonsense stops here.
Nordstrom's given back a little bit of that pump it got overnight, back down around 22 here. Still up about 3.9%, almost 4%. On the other side, ones that are gap down, continuing seems to lose a little bit of momentum. PVH. PVH is, of course, Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, a couple of that, more premium brands, down about 7.67%.
Yeah, Nvidia only down like 60 cents. I mean, like it's nothing. They are nervous. They are waiting on that those
Yeah,
numbers.
you can see it all. Yeah, you know.
SMCI getting a little bit of a bid here down here at 449. Yeah, 450 now.
450 bounce back up. Yep, a little bit. Like I said, right at the bottom of that daily linear regression.
And a little bit of a dumping there in Bitcoin again. 250 bucks. I mean, it's that strong. I mean, it's
Yeah, we see that volatility right now in the morning. The next half hour or so will still keep it going until about 10:15, 10:30, and then you sort of see Bitcoin get back into its groove. SMCI trying to catch a little bit of momentum back up here. I'll be interested to see if it can get back to where it fell after its poor earnings report, about 480 in that zone.
I think a lot of people ask the question, who is doing the most of trading in crypto right now? Is it the institutions? Is it the ETFs? What's going on there?
For Bitcoin, definitely ETF.
Yeah.
That's where the volume is, without a doubt. You're seeing it in the U.S., and now you're seeing it in developing countries as Brazil and some of these other nations are launching. BlackRock and some of the VanEck have been launching ETFs in other nations, so you are seeing a move there into that. And again, like I said, what we've seen is Glassnode does a great job of tracking on-chain metrics, and they show you whale wallets and how they've been accumulating over the last few months again. This is sort of the time. The whales in Bitcoin are not unlike Warren Buffett, where everybody says, man, I wish I knew what he was doing, because if I had seen that, I would have done it too. But with Bitcoin, you can see a little bit. Is what happens is those whales start to accumulate. They've shown it before pretty much every bull run. And that bull run might only take us to 75. I'm not saying we're going to, break above 100, but they tend to figure that out when it's at 59, that this is sort of the time that people are going to capitulate. They buy it down, and then they hold it, and you see them sell it back in. When strength starts to pick back up, is been a tendency. August has generally been a poor month for Bitcoin in general. It's been
Yeah.
It sort of hits a crescendo, in my opinion, at the Bitcoin conference. It always goes down during the Bitcoin conference. They got to pay their bills, all those drinking bills, and then it seems to be weak usually for about it's got a little bit of a hangover for 4 to 6 weeks following Bitcoin conference, and then it gets back into its
I would
regular
know about
rotation.
that.
Yeah.
I've had the dubious honor of being there a few years in a row, so I definitely know that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we definitely do see that as part of it.
SMCI is slipping again here now, 445 here. So my eye is tight on SMCI this morning.
Wow. Yeah. Back towards the lows of the day. 440 lows of the day.
It could break below that fairly soon here. But when the capitulation happens in SMCI, that money's got to go somewhere else. To go to cash, I don't know. There's a lot of losses there. Does that go back into somewhere else? Does it go into Nvidia?
Right, Nvidia, AMD, Intel. Do any of the other chip makers see any kind of push from this? It's also interesting because I wonder if it will temper some of the auxiliary plays that people might have been playing. I know a lot of traders that, as opposed to trading Nvidia tonight, might have been looking at AMD or an SMCI or Intel as a sympathy play, a corollary play on it. As
Nasdaq slipping here now, that 80 points here, so Nasdaq getting hit a bit. We're seeing Chewy, CHWY now about 7% here. I know my dog eats a lot of the chewy bones.
Absolutely. I actually have my. I was checking this morning to make sure my dog's, the automatic reship was on its way here coming out. So we talked about Xpeng, talking about Chinese cars. Li Auto actually showing some negative movement here today on squeezing by rising costs. They're down about 3.45% here. And they have taken down their full year estimates a little bit. Their sales are lagging. Again, I think that tends to be the more expensive car that has the issues right now when it comes to overseas.
SMCI now at the lows of the day.
Wow, yeah, 474. And look at that volume.
437.75. Yep, a big break to the downside.
It's almost hit its daily volume already for the day at 950.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Indeed.
That is curious of what Nvidia is looking like volume wise here. You're right on pace, 36 million. Normally do about 338. That's about right. So, like you said, I think that shows people sitting on their hands a little bit here on the Nvidia, wait and see what happens.
And I just bought a few shares here of SMCI here, 435.50.
There you go.
I may be wrong, but just a starter position. Still slipping. Like I said, I don't ever buy anything full boat right from the beginning.
CNN IDC talking about a little optimism when it looks at Apple right now. They expect to see the global smartphone shipments start to climb again after 2 years of challenges there. Everybody got their new phones during. It's funny that I fall right into that category. One of those people that got a new phone during COVID, and now it's time. My battery life is getting worse and worse. Time to upgrade. So looks like I am not alone. They are expecting and announced that they're expecting a little bit of a boost through their smartphones. They've got their big Apple Day coming up soon, right?
Sure do.
They say
440.
Big announcement this year.
Yeah, I mean, the whole market is just waiting on one thing, and that's NVIDIA. So I don't really see much here.
Again, the one that I keep bringing up that keeps getting slammed, PDD. Look at Temu, down another 4% here after gapping down overnight again. Last time it got down this low was August of last year. So it hit 52-week lows this morning. I can't actually say I've ever bought anything from Temu.
No.
Take a look at Foot Locker, getting a little bit of a bounce. Again, another one that had been absolutely decimated after earnings call last night. Still down about 14.66 at almost $28 a share. It had dropped down to $27.50. I will say I've noticed as I've been at my malls around here lately too. The other thing is there's a lot of options besides Foot Locker. If you're looking for like the newer, cooler shoes, there's these, resellers, so to speak, shops that are out there that are doing the business. And then if you look on the other side, your uh, Marshalls, DLMs, TJ Maxx, TJX companies are all doing a pretty good job in that business too.
I mean, I haven't bought shoes from Foot Locker in years, Howard. I buy them off of Amazon, right? Which is Zappos.
Right? Yeah. I mean that is, shoes are one I don't do that way, but like I said, I've definitely bought them at those discount retailers as opposed to going in to Foot Locker. Looks like Box hit a little bit of resistance there at 32.19. Starting to drop back down again. Cloud storage supplier had good earnings report last night. Had seen a nice move up on that. They were one of the few that raised their annual outlook that I've seen. And they set a 52-week high, I think all-time high. No, 52-week high. So definitely seems like people are doing some stock picking as opposed to just widespread buying, indiscriminate buying and selling. So
we're seeing that Russell Investments president Kate Ella, hello. She says, in terms of the U.S. consumer, you're still seeing the spending happening, maybe just a little bit more carefully. That's exactly what I said earlier, right? People are still spending, but they're just being a little bit more careful about their spending.
Right? Being a little bit more choosy about what they buy too.
Yeah. Quality over quantity.
Absolutely. HSBC analysts just released a report. They had analyzed key terms heard in the corporate earnings calls and that they're hearing more of a positive take to it. So a little bit of sentiment within corporate earning calls seem to be moving back into a more positive state. That came from HSBC today. I'll look here. We do also have coming up PCE inflation numbers will be out tomorrow. So that will be a big one. Personal consumption expenditures. Seeing General Motors announcing that they're going to delay the start of production of a battery plant in Indiana. So a few more hiccups when it comes to the EV business here in the U.S. Let's see if that's moving their stock price at all. Nope, not at all. GM actually has an interest. Have you looked on a daily chart lately, Steve?
We're seeing a slip here in the Bitcoin, just dropping here pretty heavily. It's about $300 there. $400,
Yeah, you gotta look out at that. Anything below that 58,500 mark would be show weakness down to 56 at that point. Still seeing investment though, Steve. You see investment firm Lemniscap raised 70 million fund targeting early stage Web3 products. So that's a new fund that's anchored in Accolade
SMCI now
Partners.
down 23% here. Whew.
Wow.
Yeah, tick dropping here quite heavily here. 10 o'clock market. That's about right.
Yep. Like I said, it just seems to fade on out a little bit here. Yeah, 15-minute chart on QQQ. You can see just after the initial spike, just sell off, sell off, sell off. Nvidia down now about 1.5 points.
That's a big drop in Bitcoin. There's some big sell orders coming in there. That's got to be government there somewhat.
Well, repositioning. You got to remember that's another thing you got to keep in mind in that 9 to 10 o'clock hour, repositioning of ETFs.
Right.
So as they reconcile their daily flows this morning.
That's a lot of reconciling.
Yeah. Well, it's been. I mean, the inflows and outflows have been ridiculous out of those ETFs, and they want to get options on them. Now, here's a question for you: do you think options in general, it's always said, right, would make more stability in the market as opposed to less, supposed to bring down volatility, right? Because you can hedge against it, your positions.
Yep.
So maybe that would be a good thing. A little bit of a bounce back up to 59.3 there. Doesn't look like people have a lot of good feelings about CrowdStrike going into their earnings, huh?
No.
Down about 3%.
Another bounce there. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, these ETFs sell off. That's something you want to see, right? You saw the sell off come in one big swoop, and now it's slowly getting bought back up. So, although now it's slowly getting sold back down. Let's see what else is moving here.
All right, Howard, it is 10 o'clock. Let's take us home.
Okay. Well, everybody, thank you for joining Steve and I here for our first hour in the market. And I will be back to see you here at 11 a.m. We're going to go through, show you how to set up our screens on Quasar Markets. And we're going to look a little bit at the U.S. Market Mover module and what that does for you. And then later this afternoon, I'm going to have a replay of a video with Scott Bauer where we talk about the trader's mindset. And then I have Charlie Moon coming on to show a little bit of technical analysis, the Disciple of Trend from Prosper Trading Academy at 1:30. And I'll be back again later this afternoon, hopefully with Steve, to wrap up the market and let you know what we see going into NVIDIA earnings. Thank you so much for joining us. Steve, thank you for helping us this morning.